Discuss it, yeah, I would say discuss
I
it.
got it for free. Which,
I have no words.
it's the little things.
Huh?
It's the little things.
Sometimes, without a doubt.
And then tell me what direction everybody wants to move in.
Subscriptions. Yeah. Town of Winchester.
Peeps on here?
Me.
Just one?
Just one.
Remind me to talk about
Need more controversial,
the
right?
town manager's report if I don't.
Talk about, the tax stuff and you'll have, vote any of them.
A lot of people watch it afterwards, because I'll get comments days after the meeting that, oh, you viewed it on the same too, blah, blah, blah.
Where's our new microphones and desk and all that? Should be here by now.
Just one of the chairs is here.
We're gonna sit in?
No. You're gonna stay in your green chair.
Better make me a nice leather.
Yeah, oh, that's happening. Oh, yeah.
Captain's
Makes
chair.
me sit higher too.
Like Captain.
With an eject button for you. Yeah, and I'm gonna eject.
That's a good idea. We'll put a voting thing on it. You put yes or no, you push a button.
Turn around, turn the chair around.
You know, like, the chairs there for, what is that, the American Idol or
The
whatever.
voice.
No, he was saying the
They
voice.
spin around and sing, the singer's good.
Yeah. So I get the power, I can spin you guys around, okay. That'll be good.
Good evening. Today is Monday, November 4th, 2024. I'd like to call the regular Board of Selectmen's meeting to order.
Linda Grappo,
Troy Lemire?
Paul Harrington.
Todd Archuleta,
Glenn Albanesius.
William Hester?
Candy Perez,
William Pozo.
Selectman Marino is excused. Join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Agenda review?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to add one thing under boards and commissions.
Okay.
The agenda, there was 2 reappointments that are missing from our packet, and I'd like to just add those, seeing how that's just a formality,
All right.
pretty much.
Anything else? Moving on to,
Do you wanna take a vote on that?
okay,
Sorry, it's not
yeah.
I'll second the motion if you want to vote.
Thank you, Troy. Thank you, Bill. And just other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of adding it? Unanimous?
And Mr. Mayor, with that, and just under boards and commissions, can Glenn and I just, I think, maybe an official review of the boards and commissions? We're trying, and information comes in, but if we can have clear guidelines of our new process, if it's the right process, if we could possibly entertain that tonight, just so we're clear here at Town Hall of what you all are expecting at meetings. I don't know
So,
if that,
first off, right in our new outline here, there's nothing for reappointments. So there's no line item but people that have served already and just wanna re-up their terms.
Seat reappointments. It's,
so do we,
it's reassignment.
It's reassignment, yeah.
so I think it's a good idea to talk about this whole process. So you wanna do it right now, so.
yeah, so if, I can't make a motion, so
So you
if you guys so,
Well, I think we just talk about it under boards and commissions.
Yep.
Because that's the title.
okay.
Moving on to item number 4. Can I have approval of the minutes of a regular meeting on October 21st?
So
I
moved.
I will make a motion to approve, except for one correction under item 13, the adjournment. Unanimous, it should be 6-0, not 7-0. Selectman Perez was absent at that meeting.
Troy, you want to second that?
Yeah.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Unanimous?
I should abstain, I'm sorry.
Oh, 501.
Yeah.
on to item number 5, citizens' comments. The Board of Selectmen welcomes public comments. Speakers be limited to 3 minutes and may speak once. Anyone wish to speak? Moving on to item number 6, town manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This recaps the October 21st to November 3rd timeline. No particular order, but as I write this, which comes into my head. So quickly, I did attend a Northwest Transit District meeting back on Monday. I am looking to potentially spending more time at the Northwest Transit District. There is a question of, am I an actual seated member, not member? We're gonna look into it a little bit further. I know former town managers were a seated voting member, so we're gonna go see them at the next meeting. But I think as they continue to ask the town, for more and more dollars every budget, I think it's important that we know what our dollars are going for and also that our dollars are being used wisely. So you'll see more information from me coming out of the Northwest Transit District, as I do tend to be at every single one of their meetings on a monthly basis, getting a better handle on, the transit district, what they're offering for the town for the money that we're supplying them. Moving on, I did meet and look over the town's retirement accounts and met with a wealth manager to discuss potential improvements. We are in the early initial phases, but it appears that the town is paying fees that are a little bit unnecessary, and the wealth manager is also looking at ways to provide better guidance for our staff and potentially reduce our costs in what we're offering our staff in terms of our retirement programs. The ambulance group did come in. They met with the mayor and I at our last Board of Selectmen's meeting. We will be looking to revise the current contract that we have with them. The current contract does not talk about the additional crew that we brought on with this year's budget, so we will be looking to add an addendum to the contract. We were going to meet tonight, but we've pushed the meeting off for a few more weeks to give them a few more weeks to come up with a new contract. But I will bring that contract for all of you to review. I think it's important to note that although our budget, was slightly delayed until it passed, which, passed obviously sometime in August, we had initially funded $280,000 for that full-time crew. I've informed the ambulance, obviously, that that crew didn't begin until October. That's when we would expect to make that expenditure, and they were okay with that. So we do have slight savings in that we didn't pay for, obviously July, August, and September, 3 months, 1 quarter of money that we will not be sending off to them because, simply put, we put that $280,000 in the budget. We said it was going to be for a crew. Crew obviously didn't start until October. No sense of, spending that money for a crew that didn't exist. Moving on, we had a great day. We hosted Congressman Larson and Senator Blumenthal in town. They visited both the Winstead Health Center and our fire department, both which received direct funding from Washington. Obviously, we expressed our gratitude for their support, and we'll continue to keep them informed of any additional needs that our town has. Those are great sources of funding that allowed us, to obviously help redo our fire department and Winstead Health Center. Great project to help our veterans and get them back on their feet. So we appreciate both of those, Congressman and Senator, coming into town. It's always fun seeing them when there's not a lot of cameras because they're just real people, and it was just a great day. I have a connection with Congressman Larson, so we got to joke a little bit, and I'll embarrass him a little bit right now. We actually wanted to bring the congressman and senator here at Town Hall because of all the construction that was going on Elm Street, and we didn't want them over on Elm Street. And we're about to get into our cars and head on over here, and I see our fire chief was here waiting, and I called him and I said, Chief, we have to move back to the firehouse. What do you mean? I go, because Congressman Larson's on the ballot and he can't be 75 feet, and we were literally going to be in this room where voting was taking place right across the hallway. So I go up to the congressman and I said, unfortunately, Mr. Larson, I can't bring you to town hall. Why? I go, 70, he goes, what, good catch. So anyways, we ended up going over to the firehouse. The one thing I wanted to avoid was any type of injury, and unfortunately, Congressman Larson got out of his vehicle and tripped and ended up falling because of just the condition of what everything looked like over there. Happy to report we're paving now, but it was still just a great day, and I don't think the good congressman's going to hold us against that he tripped getting out of his car. But still a great day, and very appreciative of the federal dollars that were given to this town. Continuing on my tour of Winchester, I did get a chance to visit Park Pond, actually being on a boat, touring all of Park Pond. It was absolutely a beautiful, beautiful day. It was absolutely beautiful, beautiful lake. And the resident that took me out there just explained a lot of the history that was going on. So I very much appreciate that resident taking, an hour out of his day, showing me some of the other resources that we have in town. Speaking of lakes, we have officially opened the gates for the drawdown this year. As you probably are aware, this is the smaller drawdown, but the gates were officially opened on November 1st, as promised, and as we stated several times. The state boat launch obviously did get delayed. They have paved it, but they wanted to stripe it and put wheel stops in. Their tentative open date will be this weekend coming up, but we needed to continue with what we needed to do in town to allow people that was doing any particular work on their docks or anything to allow them to start with their contractors as they had them already scheduled. And then I'm sure you probably maybe caught on Facebook, social media, or the town's website, we are experiencing a case of cyanobacteria. It's not uncommon for lakes to go through this. With the weather has been ideal for this to happen. We encourage that if you do come in contact with one of the blooms, that you wash your skin of either you, your children, or if your fur babies have happened to come in contact, we recommend and we highly suggest that you clean either the skin or the fur with clean water. The town is going to discuss plans moving forward that if this continues or is an annual occurrence of these cyanobacterias, we're going to be prepared. We're going to be ready to discuss the information with our residents. I'm still learning. Fortunately, Jeff has been assigned to help me with cyanobacteria, so him and I are becoming gurus on cyanobacteria, but we will have more information because it was something new that I never heard of. And I also do want to thank Selectwoman Perez, who helped me with cyanobacteria when it officially became a bloom, and she alerted me to it. But we're dealing with it up there, and it happens with the weather and things at the bottom floating to the top. Lake's going to be fine. We're going to insure it, and we're going to look at ways that we could potentially make sure it doesn't come back. We had our initial meeting on the flooding issue at Boyd Street with the state, the town, and the property owner. While the state can provide some assistance, any solutions need to be implemented by the private property owner. The property owner is exploring ways to mitigate the water, including potential concrete structures. We're going to meet again in a few weeks to discuss their progress. The state came into an issue of private property and how much work it can actually do without, running afoul to any of the state ordinances or statutes or anything like that, and improving possibly a public property. But fortunately, the private property owner was pretty positive and understood. I guess what it's going to come down to is he goes out, he finds the price of creating concrete structures. That's what we're going to come back in a few weeks to see exactly where it is and how seriously this owner is about constructing those concrete barriers. So more on that as it continues. But the good news is that we brought all the parties together right away. There is interest in it from the state, from the private property owner, and obviously the town. I heard the concerns obviously from this board, so I'm going to stay on it and make sure we get some type of a solution, even if it's just relief and then eventually a permanent. So we have to do something up there because my phone again was ringing off the hook obviously this morning. Attended a CTCMA luncheon with a bunch of town managers from obviously Connecticut. This particular luncheon was all around staff wellness, and I brought back a couple of wellness initiatives that we hope to implement in this town as well. Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on the 28th, where potential regulation change was discussed for Nova Farms, who was interested in putting a marijuana grow farm. That did get pushed off to the second meeting in November, because the first meeting in November is the 11th. They have canceled that meeting because of Veterans Day. I did get a call from a few commission members that are looking for selectmen's input. That could either be done either by a letter from you and or if you wish to speak at the meeting being held at the end of November. I'll get the exact date. I want to think it's the 25th. I think it's the 25th. So they were just looking, you're obviously under no obligation, but they just said, hey, wonder what the Board of Selectmen thinks of the proposed regulation change. So I put that on your radar. We did get a police order-in document from the police union. The document includes incentives to reward officers who sign up to help ensure that everyone's contributing and working, some of the overtime shifts that are out there. The incentives are definitely not necessarily cash incentives, but possibly ways of avoiding a potential order-in if you've put in enough hours of taking enough of the shifts that are being available. The chief and I and the union will sit down in an upcoming meeting to probably fine-tune that document and get that out there. So we'll have a brand-new order-in document and see where that goes. So far, so good. Tentative presentation by Live Green at the Little Red Barn about electric vehicles and the potential barriers to adoption in this particular town. It was an initial meeting. I thought it went pretty well, but more information is going to come. It looks like these meetings are going to continue on a not so regular basis, but at least, there'll be meetings about bringing potentially more electrical vehicles in town and seeing what we can do as a town to help, put up charging stations and encourage the use of electric vehicles. And then finally, I attended the trunk or treat with my kids and my wife last weekend. And I just want to thank the Parks and Rec Department. It was awesome, and it was really, really crowded. It was great to see all the families, all the kids, all the smiling faces. This town did it right, and the trunk or treat event was just absolutely great. And my kids fell asleep on the ride home, so it was a complete win-win night, and I got transferred right into bed. So with that, I open it up to any questions.
Anyone from the board? Candy?
I'd like to start a dialogue about parking. The last time we discussed it was probably about a year and a half ago, and there was a parking study done. And the reason I want to bring it back up for you to look at and for this board to consider maybe either enforcement of the 2 hours or a change in the overnight time is because down the east end, there was a change with where tenants could park overnight. They can no longer park overnight in the bank parking lot, so they now have to park somewhere else. So the landlords, I believe, have places for them to go in the back somewhere else. But what's happened is the tenants have now come out onto Main Street. So when they're out on Main Street, they stay there like for a good part of the day, which means that the limited parking that's down there is difficult for, the cafe that's there, the live that's down there, the hair place, et cetera. That same phenomena occurs in for like the biggest landmark is New James Block. In the New James Block, you can drive by there at night, and none of the buildings, the stores are open, but the streets are completely full. Like today, if I wanted to have stopped at at one of the small stores in there, I can't do that because there's no parking space. And I believe when we looked at the study and whatnot, it's about tenant parking in those areas. Because other parts of Main Street are open. Like I can always park by the hardware store. There's not usually a problem parking in that stretch of Main Street. And even up the far end, there's enough parking, even though it gets crowded when, it's a busy night, at Mario's and whatnot. But I think, we were looking at a way that there is municipal parking behind Main Street. So the people in those buildings could park in the municipal lot. Granted, it's on the other side of the firehouse, but if they needed to move, they could do that. We also have, the Bank of America building and that other parking lot. And then, but the landlords also, need to help solve this issue as well. So I know that the Main Street merchants in the past have asked for it. I know the WOW Group has been asking for it for a while. And now I ran into, just by going into one of the businesses down the other end with the change that just occurred. So I think there needs to be some discussion about parking, even, we started talking about, resident permits. Should we or shouldn't we? Should there be the 2-hour enforcement? Should there just be overnight bans where it becomes easier to clear it? And I know in the survey, people had all sorts of thoughts all over the place, but it's not helping nothing's changing on it. So would like to bring that forward again.
Okay. Kenny, just, maybe I can find it a little easier. So about a year and a half ago, parking study, do you know what agency did it? Or was it a town one?
It was a town one.
It was a town one? Okay, fine.
It was sent out by Josh Kelly,
Okay,
and there were responses back to it.
okay.
And that's how we know the responses, one person said, yes, we want this, and one person said, no, we don't want this. So it's not there's no easy answer to it. I mean, not everybody's gonna be happy, but I continue to see, like where you can't ever stop, because it's always so crowded. And then now we have a new spot that's gonna be crowded again, and that's, in a big corner there, so.
Okay.
But I thought that we should start talking about that again.
Great idea.
Troy?
I have to agree with Candy on this. I brought it up also at another meeting, and I'd like to expand on that. I think this board should be looking into some sort of, maybe through the police department, an authority to remedy this situation, to keep track of the hours that, because I know myself, that, people that live on Main Street are parking on Main Street all day long. And, I mean, they could park across the street or I understand that it's under construction, but still, there's places for them to park, and it's actually hurting our businesses in town, which we do not want to happen. So, I don't know, maybe we can explore the opportunity of hiring somebody that could make their wage back by finding individuals that are, taking advantage of the situation, that there's no authority out there, checking the times that they're there.
Okay. I'm just thinking, because you're dealing with a state road, but I'm not saying it's a barrier by any
We've had one
stretch.
in
Yeah.
the past.
But the 2-hour parking signs are still on the state road, and that still could be enforced.
Still could be enforced.
Right, so,
Yep.
but there's issues of building owners that park in front of their properties because they need to, because, whether it's an ability issue, ability or a place issue to cross. But those are, just a few of them. We also talked within that whole conversation about maybe there should be handicap parking along Main Street as well, not just, there isn't any.
There isn't.
Like in front of Town Hall, even tonight, should there be one out of the 3 spots in front of Town Hall be a handicap spot, right? So, I mean, it can be a very complex, it is a very complex issue, but it's also could be a very simple tweaking to start with as we move along, with, other plans. Because planning and zoning right now is talking about, parking lots in the downtown area. They addressed that at the meeting the other night too, so that there are people looking at, parking lot, privately owned parking lots in the downtown area. So, I mean, I think we know it happens, so I think if we can start to move that.
Just a comment on the handicap parking in front of Town Hall. That request actually was put into my office several months ago, and we have reached out to the state to see if they would allow us to put a handicap spot in front of Town Hall. We have not gotten an answer, but that was a request that came in. It was early on when I started my tenure here, so, and as the police department is the, street authority, not necessarily parking authority, but we have also the police department working with us to at least try and unlock a handicap spot in front of Town Hall, because that request did come in very early when I first got here, and, that particular individual, yet we don't have access, or unless it's in the back, but it's not visible, and so, we're on it, but, I'm taking notes. Anybody else? Parking. And Todd found an email, which is great, so I think
You
the
can put
battle
it
of
around
finding
the
it.
time, yeah.
Yeah,
And-
so,
And Terry probably has the information.
good.
Any other? Moving on to item number 7, correspondence. I received an email yesterday from Andrew Champagne, which I forwarded to the board. It's in their packets, I believe, right?
It is in their packet, yes.
He has concerns about the proposed waterway ordinance change. Anyone else have any other correspondence?
Will we be able to bring that into the record under under A, in new business?
Either then or it's, yeah, that's what it is, A. Any other correspondence? Seeing none, moving on to item 8, boards and commissions.
Okay, so, spoke with our committee, we vetted a new application for the rec board. So I would entertain a motion to appoint Joy Hubbard to the rec board.
I'll second. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous?
And then, unfortunately, we received a resignation from one of our long-standing planning and zoning members, Craig Sandin. So I would like to thank Craig for his service. I don't know if anybody knows how many years he put in, but he's been in there quite a long time. I'm not sure the years. I wish I looked that up, but thank you, Craig. And then we have a gentleman that is an alternate to the Planning and Zoning Commission that showed interest in making himself a full-time member. And instead of destroying his last name, I'm gonna call him Adam Q. And I would like to make a motion to appoint Adam as a full-time member on the Planning and Zoning.
I'll second. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous?
And then, last but not least, which was left off this thing, we have 2 people that are up for reassign, or how would you put that?
Reappointment?
Reappointment, and so it's Rista Malanka, so number 1. So I'd like to make a motion to put Rista back on as a full-time member.
Which board?
Planning and zoning, as a full-time member.
What's her new expiration date?
It's 5 years from 10 of 25, right? So it'd be 10 of 30. Is it 5 years or?
It would be of 20, sorry, but as of 24, because if you said she's expired, so then it would be 29 if it's a 5-year term.
Okay, 29, so it's 10 of, it ended 10 of 24.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion?
Yeah, when it's recorded, could that all be recorded, the term end date? Make sure that we get the
Get that right.
specific term end date and party confirmation. when it's
Party's unaffiliated.
Just when it's recorded, so,
Yep. And then last but not least,
well, we don't,
oh, we
Yeah,
didn't.
we need to, all in favor?
Sorry.
Unanimous?
Last but not least, we have another planning and zoning member whose term ended on 10 of 2024. John Cooney, a Republican, term to end, I don't know what the term is on that, because we don't have it on our paper.
Same commission, right?
Yes.
And I
So
think
five-
that expired on 10 of 24. Are all
So
the
it'd be-
alternate positions 5, excuse
So-
me, 5 years? Or are they staggered?
Thought they're
he's a,
5
he's
years.
a full member.
Yes.
It's a full member.
Oh, it's, oh.
They're
it's-
5
oh,
years, Pete?
I believe so.
I thought so.
Then
So
I'm
10
not
10 of
gonna count.
So it'll
29.
be 10 of 29 then.
Yes.
I'll second. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous?
And that's all I have.
Paul, do you want to take over that?
Yeah, so if you could, just so Glenn and I or town clerk and I are clear, and Troy, you said a word tonight that they were missing from the packet or from, what you guys are seeing tonight. We weren't told by these individuals that they were looking to potentially get re-put on. So that's why they weren't put on. I think communication's a big thing in making sure that you all have the information that you needed. So these alternate members, if you guys as a board say, well, any alternate member should just automatically be put in front of the board when their term expires, okay. We can do that, but we had no direction on that particular, everybody saw that, you know, the terms were expiring, but in my world, I think the easiest way is somebody puts in their application, right? Glenn receives it, or I receive it. Sometimes they come to my office and I immediately forward it down to the town clerk's office. We then push it out to the vetting committee. The vetting committee, and maybe I'm wrong and looking for some help on that, is a vetting committee just supposed to check to, A, make sure that they're an electorate, they live in town, and their party affiliation, in that we don't run afoul to minority representation. Am I right or wrong on the vetting committee? Okay,
Basically, pretty much.
please. I'm looking for guidance.
Well, I mean, I could let you keep going, or I could just say what I think. Which one would you like?
We're an open board. at
We're an
this
open
point.
board. Go ahead. I like a good dialogue.
Absolutely.
I think the committee needs to meet in person. Troy, I think you need to call a meeting. I think we need to meet in person. When we meet in person, we need to include Paul and Glenn in the in-person meeting so that we can review everything that we've done in the past, because the reappointments come from a letter that's sent from the manager's office. Are you still sending letters to people whose term are expiring?
That would imply that I've sent the letter, so
I'm asking because,
No.
see, it also, you know, Lori Bissette used to do all of those,
Okay.
all of this and keep everybody in good, straight order. And Terry Hall used to do all of that in order. And then Glenn came on board and started to help Terry, and then everything shifted over to Glenn,
okay.
right? So somebody, whoever that somebody is, and that's why I'm suggesting the committee meet to go through all these steps, to talk about how this all kind of stayed in order, because the new process was put in, but it doesn't seem like we all know the new process, right? So I've been sitting, trying to, you know, figure it out and go along with it. And I think the only solution is the three of us, the two of you, even Terry, we get in a room, we put out everything that we used to do, because there has to be a letter that goes out for people that are about to expire. And then they take that letter and they send it back in, yes, I'd like to be reappointed, or no, I don't want to be reappointed. And that used to go out of the town manager's office, right? So there's that part, and that would solve the reappointment issue. And then all these other things, and, you know, do we do it on the first meeting, on the second meeting, do it on the third meeting? Because I thought the process was, it was just gonna take 2 meetings, not 3 meetings. But then I don't know where the first meeting of the month came from as the only time that we're supposed to do it. So I think that we need to go back in, straighten it out, write it down, make sure everything's covered in the little tiny bases, and then come back out again.
It was less confusing in the way it was before, so.
Candy, are you on the committee with Troy?
Yes.
Yeah,
James?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Well, I said that, you know, I don't know how many months ago, I said, well, good luck with that, Glenn. We've been doing boards and commissions for my 21 years now, you know, and we've always found some struggle somewhere, so I think we always will.
As long as we have it
so.
written down, I think that's the key, so we have a policy, a roadmap to follow.
Right.
Well, and I think, and just to offer up, you know, input on this, I think reserving it for the first meeting of the month, you could potentially have somebody put an application in the day after we meet. That person will not be seated for 3 months. Because you're gonna miss the second meeting, then you go to let's just call it November. I get an application tomorrow, send it off to the vetting committee. Can't take action on it at the second meeting in November, because the way we had structured it was only the first meeting of the month. So now you're seeing them in December. This board sees it as a full. Then at the January meeting, the person has the potential of getting voted and getting seated. You've taken a potential volunteer, an individual all excited to potentially get on a board or commission and say, see you in 3 months. And they're like, oh, I kind of lost interest. So just a recommendation in that, you know, we'll work as many hours as we have to, and we'll get the information ready. But I think limiting it to one meeting, just the first meeting of the month, does more harm than good. It should, if I get an application in, send it out to the vetting committee, it could be the second meeting of the month, it could be the first meeting of the month, but we could potentially get this individual seated sooner rather than later. which you all know, it's a thankless position. It's volunteers' hours. The pay ain't all that great. Oh, it's zero. We do, we want to get these individuals when they're the most excited, when they sign their name on a letter, to get them involved in that board
Well,
immediately.
there's also, there's a few other things to talk about too, and when you put people out there and stuff like that. Multiple candidates for the same position. And then how does that come? How do the three people that are on the committee relate to the rest of the board when it comes to decision time? So I think that, again, I think we just need to go get in the same room and hash it out.
Okay, I don't, so it's on the vetting committee, it's Troy, Candy,
Bill.
and Bill, okay.
So can you check your calendar tomorrow, Glenn's calendar, find a date that works for you, send us out a
Yeah.
date or two?
Yep.
So that we can pick a meeting, beginning of December? You wanna do it sooner? Within the
Whatever
next
date
week-
works, whatever date works.
Within the next week or two, let's do it. Pick a date. I can open my schedule when necessary.
And I'm also cognizant, I know, Troy usually, works during the day, and I know, Bill, you come in at random times. I mean, we'll throw out potentially this Thursday, let Glenn and I just talk in the morning, but potentially, I think we want to get this done sooner rather than later, because we have a meeting in 2 weeks, and depending on how the meeting all goes, let's not wait till December, let's
all right.
And
meet.
it would be helpful too to get the document that was given to us when we changed the process. So I don't keep my packets, because I would be flooded by now. So if we could get that document that started, the 2 meeting process instead of the 3 meeting process, that would be helpful to work off of.
Okay.
So that we don't reinvent everything. But we need to do that, and then we're probably gonna find out that we probably should have a regular meeting of the little committee, the week, maybe the
Prior.
Monday of the week we're not meeting, to make sure we review what's there. And then, I believe, Glenn, you have it all in a different spreadsheet now where we can actually sort the expiration dates. Is that true?
Well, yeah, he sent it
Yeah,
out.
we have that, right? So we can,
And then actually, if you look at it, almost every month, there's gonna be, people that their terms are expiring, so.
yeah, and there should
That's why it's
be,
gonna,
right, and there should be a reappointment so that
Correct.
if it's sorted, you will know which ones are coming up in every month. Because in the old one, they merged a lot of cells and didn't carry them over into, carry the names of committees over to make it a sortable document, right? But if it's now a sortable document, then it's easier, then you can sort, you would know that these reappointments were needed, right? Or without somebody telling you that has happened, so.
Well, I took it upon myself for the planning and zoning because for one, the term was up.
Yep.
And I just reached out to him because I thought that was my job, so.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, it is, but now it's, just let's,
Yeah, and I like just so we try and get the agenda somewhat finalized by the Thursday before that Monday meeting, and then you all get it sometime, Friday. So that meeting on Monday could be moved to a Tuesday, could potentially move to a Wednesday, but eventually, either Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, schedules conflict, but at least then we would have all the accurate information to finalize the agenda that we try and get finalized Thursday, Friday
right.
morning,
But
so.
you don't wanna do it right before the agenda's due, because there might be some vetting that has to happen.
Right.
So you need to give the group some time to figure out,
What we're doing.
vet it or not vet.
So Glenn and I will talk, let's see if we can get a meeting for this Thursday and go from there, get us all in a room and hammer this out. But I just, thank you, because for the last few meetings, it's been, and I'm like, but we gotta get it straight, because these are precious volunteers looking to serve the community, so we wanna treat them, obviously, the best way possible. So, I'm good.
And I think it would be helpful if all the information was in our packet, so we can see it as well.
Correct. Yep.
Like, I got an email about Adam 2 weeks ago, but it wasn't in this packet, but Joy's information, which I've had like 5 times, is in the packet. Nothing on Adam, nothing about the 2 people that, for reappointments. So it would be helpful if the complete packet was complete.
Readily available, and you
Complete.
can, yes,
Complete.
yes. So then you, as a non-member of the vetting committee, can quote-unquote, vet the individual before you place a vote.
Exactly.
Agreed.
And know what's going on.
Yep.
And maybe pick up on the date if it's incorrect.
More eyes, the better, for sure.
Anything else? All right.
I feel like we're ready.
Thank you, Troy. Moving on to item 9, unfinished business, 24-45B, consider and possibly act on the adoption of an ordinance to create a tax abatement for volunteer firefighters and volunteer emergency medical services. This is the third and final meeting. Take it away.
So we've had pretty much the same ordinance before you at all 3 meetings, is where our fire department, our volunteer fire department and volunteer ambulance would receive a tax abatement up to $2,000, depending on if they met for different point system that we've established, which you see obviously in your packet. The $2,000 abatement would come after service of 5 years or more, and it would be a maximum of $2,000. Speaking with the volunteer fire department and the volunteer ambulance, we believe that the cost of this potential ordinance will be a cost of about $45,000 a year and loss of revenue for the town of Winchester. And I know both our fire chiefs are here. I think one of our fire chiefs may want to say something.
Sat in the wrong seat. Actually, it was 65,000 when we did the last meeting when we discussed, you wanted the maximum exposure, and it was 65,000. I just wanted to correct that. Excuse me, and the ambulance wasn't able to make it, neither Jeff nor Arnie. They both reached out to me, so I just wanted to make that one correction.
Thanks.
And this would take effect in the 25-26 tax cycle. It wouldn't be retroed in the current tax cycle that we're in, so it wouldn't begin until July 1st.
So I move that the Board of Selectmen formally adopt this new town ordinance regarding abatement for volunteer firefighters and volunteer emergency service, EMS, to take effect in the 2025-2026 tax cycle and thereafter.
Second the motion.
Thank you, Troy. Thank you, Bill. Any discussion? Candy?
Yeah, I just want to remind everybody that on March 15th, when you get your budget, that this increase of up to $65,000 will be in the budget. It's a little bit less than a 0.1 mil increase, so I'd say it's probably about a 0.06 mil increase, and I think it's important for everybody to understand that. We all support it. We all support the fact that the volunteers go out and do a lot of work for everybody, keep our fire ratings up and whatnot. But when it comes time for next March 15th, this is another cost that is in there that we cannot waive now, that we will not have an option to waive it. So if the budget went to zero, if the public voted to zero, this up to $65,000 will bump something else out of the budget unless we have grand list growth. So I just want to state that, because when everybody starts voting or talking about it next, mostly end of April, May, that this was decided in November, that affects next year.
Thank you, Candy. Anyone else?
Yeah, especially with what's been happening over the last few months with this really dry weather and all these fires. The guys were out today. I know they were out last Friday because I was out there with them. And every time you turn around, I forgot how many fires are going on right now in the state of Connecticut. It's a lot. So, and there's not, the volunteerism is down, as we all know, and this is very important. So absolutely agree that this will bump something next year if this does not pass the first time around, because this is important. These guys do a lot of work, a lot of time learning and working, and they're very much appreciated for all their hard work.
Anyone else? Seeing no one else, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Unanimous? Congratulations.
Thank you.
Moving on to new business 24-49, consider and possibly act on the proposed revisions to ordinance number 380, water bodies, public.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With us tonight is our zoning enforcement officer, Jeff Green, who has worked with our Inland Wetlands Commission to come up with some potential changes to the ordinance. I'm going to let Mr. Green speak on those, since he has intimate knowledge and worked one-on-one with the commission to propose these changes.
Thank you, Paul. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and selectmen and women. As Paul said, I'm Jeff Green. I'm the zoning officer, wetlands agent, blight official, assistant town planner. Wetlands considered some possible changes to what's commonly known as the dock and mooring ordinance over the past few months. They felt the ordinance was working fairly well as it was, but they did propose some relatively minor changes. You should have gotten an updated document in your packet with the changes. I could go through them one by one. There really aren't that many if you'd like to do it that way. The first one falls under definitions 380-1, subsection B. They just wanted to add, you'll see in a different color, that the structure must have been installed prior to May 11th, 1993. That is the grandfather date for folks that have structures in the water. If they could prove that it was there prior to May 11th, 1993, it could stay as is, which could be in conflict with some of the sections of the ordinance. So they just wanted to drop that in there again.
Jeff, before you jump on to the next one,
Yes.
I will note for the record and for the board that the town attorney did look over all of this as well and has given his okay on these proposed changes, that they're legally within the realm of what we can do. So the town attorney did weigh in on the document.
Thank you, Paul.
This update is, what you're just talking about, the May 11th, is also on the fourth page at the top.
It should appear on both the old document and the new Kevin Nelligan reviewed document, but the change is the same, just inserting the date of May 11th, 1993.
So which one's yours and which one's Kevin's? So the first 3 pages are repeated on pages,
So the next change actually would be a Kevin change, so we can discuss that, and you'll see which sheet you're following. The next change should appear under subsection E of 380-7, new structures or objects. Do you see that?
Is your packet put together differently, Candy? Because I don't have anything on the fourth page.
The original packet had the pre-Kevin Nelligan review.
yeah, but up at the top of this
At the
fourth
top.
page, it talks about May 11th, 1993,
Yes.
which I'm saying is what we just talked about over on that first page under B.
I'm
So-
on the third page of the refreshed document.
On the third page of the refreshed document, there is no change.
So I think your packet is different than mine.
Huh?
I think yours is different than mine, because
So
I.
you have this,
I have
right?
the
And then
same
when,
This was in the packet. This is what I just picked up.
what
It's right
she's
in
saying
the
is right
packet.
here.
Right.
So it's a repeat of.
Yeah, it's a repeat. They've added it into another section.
And then in this,
But it's not highlighted as an add-in.
right.
If you can give me a moment, I'll make copies of the document in hand so we can all
The
look at
next
the
one
same
down under
reference.
380-6, section C.
That was always there.
So, okay, so what Selectman Perez is saying is it's there. I guess the question is why are we repeating it in the definition section, but then also stating it in
380-6, section C, scope of authorization.
I think their feeling was that in that subsection B, when it talks to an existing structure or object deemed authorized pursuant to 388, they wanted to just reiterate the fact that the date is May 11th, 1993.
Okay.
If that makes sense. Okay. So the next change, 380-7, new structures or objects, subsection E. They simply wanted to add at the end whether a public hearing is deemed necessary as part of the commission's requirements for approval. Do you see that?
Yep.
Okay, good. And I could say as a matter of course that the commission does call for a public hearing anytime the 10-foot littoral boundary cannot be observed, just out of matter of course.
on the following 3 pages, just so the board's staying along.
Next is under swim floats, 380-10. Under subsection C, they wanted to add that no part of any such swim float shall extend beyond the maximum dock length or width, nor within 10 feet of the littoral boundary of an abutting property. This is how they were treating swim floats, but it wasn't codified prior to this, so they wanted to just get the language in there for everyone to be on the same page.
You just missed on D, Jeff, and it's tiny, but I want to point
Or
that
a
out to the board.
slide, yes, correct.
There you go.
Yeah, some of the swim floats now have slides, you may have seen those at the lake. So that counts towards the appurtenances and the rules that go with that. Okay, the major change, if you will, comes under what was formerly boat lifts and walkways, 380-13. The commission would like to change this to vessel lifts and walkways. So where it stands now is if a property has adequate amount of shorefront, because there are other rules in here, you can't cover more than 50% of your shorefront. There's also maximum size capabilities of docks and other structures. But the way it's listed now is someone could have 1 boat lift and 1 jet ski lift. The commission has had applications or applicants in the past who are interested in either 2 boat lifts or 2 jet ski lifts, but the ordinance does not allow for it. So they felt if an applicant otherwise fits all the rules of the ordinance, that perhaps they should be allowed whichever 2 vessel lifts they would like to have. And that's really the change in that whole section. All boat lifts gets changed to vessel lifts. And they wanted to, again, talk about under subsection F, that a walkway is not to exceed 24 inches in width. And that does appear elsewhere in the document. Again, they wanted to be redundant with that information.
Jeff, I want to go back, because I definitely want to state clear for the record, if we
Yes.
go back to B, where it says a vessel lift shall be used for storage of only 1 boat or 2 personal watercrafts.
Right, so a typical jet ski lift can hold 2 jet skis, but a boat lift will only hold 1 boat. So hypothetically, if an applicant asked for 2 jet ski lifts, it could accommodate 4 jet skis on 2 separate lifts. And that is the extent of the changes. Like I said, the boat lift consideration is probably the most impactful one.
Jeff, anyone on the board?
Yeah, I'm just getting organized over here.
Okay. While you're doing that, I will read into the record the email from Mr. Champagne. This email was addressed to myself and Town Manager Harrington. I am writing to express my concern over the proposed changes to the waterway ordinance that I understand are on the table in the next couple of meetings. It is very disheartening to hear that we are even considering loosening these regulations. 2 vessel lifts versus 1. As it is, the shoreline of this lake has turned into a junkyard of floats, water toys, floating docks, illegal lifts, too many boats, and illegally placed mooring buoys. If anything, these regulations should be tightened to protect the lake, with the property owners directly on the water providing over 30% of the town's tax revenues. I don't think it is too much to ask that we do everything to protect our town's most valuable asset. Less is more. Further, whereas all the enforcement of our current ordinance has been, there are illegal buoys, south end of Third Bay, placed at least 100 feet out into the water directly on the littoral boundaries of a property that I know several boaters have complained about. These pose a serious danger, especially at night, and have been there for several years. There are several properties that already have more than 1 boat lift, as well as several properties that have more than 3 vessel lifts. Floats and floating docks as well pass the limits imposed by the ordinance. The point here is if we are going to have these ordinance, maybe there should be some language in the regs that state that they will be strictly enforced, and maybe the enforcement officer should do regular inspections. Even using the shiny new police boat, which I'm guessing only has a couple of hours on it based on the few times it was actually patrolling the lake this summer. I'm completely against allowing the expansion to the marina as well. There are far too many boats already on this lake, and adding more will just add more traffic, waves, noise, and pollution. The amount of cyanobacteria that has been found in the lake, pictures attached, should be a giant wake-up call to this town. I have been doing the water quality testing for the association on a monthly basis during the summer for the past 6 years, and I'm currently alarmed by it. We can argue all day about what is causing it, but I can say that the sheer amount of boats on the lake is not helping this cause. I hope it does not get to the point where the state has to shut down the lake to swimming and boating, as they have at several other lakes, due to the serious health threats of high cyanobacteria levels. Hard to come back from that once it takes hold. My family has lived at the lake since 1954, and we all want to see is a healthy and safe lake for future generations to come. Unfortunately, there are far too many signs that we're moving in the wrong direction. I would gladly meet to discuss it with you further. Sincerely, Jay Champagne.
All right. I'll start with, I'm not sure if all of you have heard about this. Well, let me start with this. I'm speaking as Candy Perez at 605 West Wakefield Boulevard. I am not speaking as the Highland Lake Watershed President, and I will also tell you the Highland Lake Watershed Board of Directors is not weighing in on the dock and mooring ordinance. And the reason we do that is because, the reason we're not doing that is because of, it's a neighbor issue, and so you may see some documents, and I called Jeff to clarify it at one point in time. We did ask Jeff to talk about a former member of the Highland Lake Watershed Association, former member of the Water Level Commission, and a person that was deeply involved in rewriting the dock and mooring ordinance back in 2015. We did ask him to talk to her about it, but the association board of directors is not making any comments on the dock and mooring ordinance, so I just want to be clear about that. The only wish that we would have is that every neighbor is considered for their waterfront property. We would say every neighbor being treated fairly. So now I will switch over to Candy Perez as a selectman and as somebody that's been on inland wetlands, knows what's happening up on the lake, and watches things. So I understand why people want boat lifts. And I understand what happens at the lake. I mean, the lake, there's something called carrying capacity now I think everybody should become familiar with. And carrying capacity, they're doing this study on a small lake up in St. George. And I also have, searched for this and what happened in other lakes. But the idea of carrying capacity is how many vessels, how much activity can you have on a body of water. For instance, we know on a highway, right? We know a highway can carry so much traffic. In planning and zoning, we know how much a development should impact, a piece of property. Should it be a quarter acre, half acre, an acre, whatever it is. On a lake, there is calculations for that in terms of carrying capacity, in terms of numbers of vehicles, whether they're paddle boards, kayaks, canoes, sailboats, etc. So I understand where the commission was going in here in terms of vessel lifts, because if you look around the lake right now, there are all sorts of different properties with all sorts of different configurations on it. So the question then becomes, with some of these, I'm gonna go through a couple of them because I think there's some little contradictory within itself in here that I picked up. So it's really like, I think we should go slow with this. There's no rush because, you're not putting anything back in until April, until you know for sure there's no ice, unless we know for sure there's no ice like the past 2 years. So I think you should go slow and really think about it. So let me go through your changes on here and point out what I think are there. And I will also say for Candy Perez personally, we have enough waterfront. I have 92 feet of waterfront that my father purchased in 1970s. So I don't have, issues with the distance between neighbors, et cetera, et cetera. So this isn't something that's really going to affect me a lot. So it's really, most of my comments are really gonna be about the cove areas, where the cove areas are, where people are close together. And people that have large pieces of property also pay the market rate for that large piece of property in terms of property taxes. And smaller properties pay less because of the square footage on the water. So sometimes, my own personal view of it, I think the amount of waterfront you own, not everybody can have all the same things in the water because you just simply don't have the kind of rooms on there, and some people do. So we start with your first change, if I can go back and find it. The grandfathering, just remember, there are photos and there are pictures of all of this, all throughout the years since 1993. There are ways to document what was in the water. As the enforcement agents change, as people on the commission change, sometimes people don't go back to the references for whatever reason they want. And 1993 is, when you look at properties that were bought in the 50s and 60s, 1993 seems relatively new to me. But there are things that I hope that you all use to be able to see that, including a GIS function that's in there for staff. So that 1993 part is okay. And then we move over to E. And this affects these lifts, right? Because under E, should an applicant not own sufficient shorefront to meet the 10-foot buffer requirement from the littoral boundary of an abutting property, the applicant may apply to the commission for a waiver. And you just added whether a public hearing is deemed necessary as part of the commission's requirement for approval. Well, the part about this is the actual regular language that's there is the 10-foot buffer. Because if you're in one of those coves now, if you're in the Shore Drive, Perch Rock Trail, and some of those other little coves that are around, if you don't keep a 10-foot buffer off of your neighbor's property and you put 2 vessel lifts in there, you can be right on top of each other. Because vessel lifts, if you figure they're about 8 feet wide, right? And then you add in a 2-foot dock, so you're up to 18 feet. If they have a regular dock there, and then you add the 10 feet after that, you're gonna need 40 to 45, 50 feet worth of waterfront to get these in there with the 10-foot boundary. If you eliminate the 10-foot boundary, then now you have smaller shore fronts putting all these vessel lifts into a smaller area. So my question, I guess, and this might be where you might need some commission members to come before the board, and not just you, is the intent to really not grant these waivers? Because if we're gonna grant waivers, as have been granted, even including putting boat lifts that extend over onto a neighbor's property was granted. If you do that, then any new property owner that comes in has their neighbor's boat lift on the property because it was granted and grandfathered. So I would ask, how is the commission going to change the waiver part if they're going to have more vessel lifts? Let's see, I have this one marked. So over under docks, under 380-9 at the very bottom, E, it says a maximum of 3 vessels shall be allowed to be berthed per property, regardless how and where they are berthed. Well, you just talked about a vessel lift and asking for 2 jet ski lifts, which would put 4 vessels on a property, not 3. So if the commission were to grant a double jet ski lift and a second double jet ski lift, then there's 4 vessels, which is in contradiction to E. And then I would ask, if you're gonna give 2 vessel lifts, are you going to allow a jet ski dock float? I don't know if you all know, the jet skis can ride up onto a plastic dock. And they're usually plastic, they have a little V in them. And most of the times they're singles or sometimes they're doubles and they're attached to walls usually. So if we're gonna expand to allow 2 vessel lifts, are we not going to have, are we still gonna have a jet ski dock lift? And there's actually one boat, I believe, is on a floating plastic boat lift. Not the metal boat lifts that we think of with the canopies on top, but the floating ones. So where do the floating ones and these 2 vessel lifts come into play? All right, next. This gets away from the vessel lifts and it gets to 380-10 swim floats. It's kind of, B and C are in contradiction with each other. So B says no part of a swim float shall be located more than 50 feet from the shorefront. C says no part of any such swim float shall extend beyond the maximum dock length or width, nor within 10 feet of the littoral boundary of an abutting property. So one says you can go 50 feet, but we know that a dock can only be 40 feet. So B and C probably need to sync up with each other. So B should go to 40, or C maybe doesn't want to say that. All right, next. Which takes us down to, that's my only other, which takes us down to the vessel lifts per property, which I think I've addressed most of it. The 24-inch in terms of the walkway, most of these most vessel lifts are on properties that also have docks, right? So you have a dock with so much water coverage, and then you have the 24-inch. I can't think of anything that would be in contradiction of what we currently have. So I would just bring up those points of it in terms of the things that are kind of working against each other here. But I think I would recommend that there needs to be more clarification of what is going to be allowed if you expand to the 2 vessel lifts. Because if you drive on the west side of Highland Lake and you look across in First Bay now, you will see all the vessel lifts that are up on lawns now, because all the vessel lifts come up and out of the water. If I was a neighbor that had people right on top of me and all of a sudden had multiple new vessel lifts with more canopies. Now, in some places, they look nice. They've done a nice job with them, and they put them in places, but there are places that already have 2 boat lifts that, when whoever talked about in the letter enforcement, I think that's something else I think the commission should probably talk to us about, is where's the enforcement of this, in terms of where the commission will be in terms of, the willingness for enforcement of these, of some of these issues. So I think the vessel lift is, would I like 2 boat lifts to get my boats out of the water so they don't crash around when the wake surfers go by too close to shore and bouncing my boats all over the place, and docks breaking? Would I like 2 of them? Yes, but would I put a canopy on them? No, because I know that the view site, so maybe something of with and without canopies may be something that would be there, but people like the canopies because you don't have to put the cover on your boat. So I would just advise the board to, take some time with this and take a look at all the implications of all these things in the water along shore, if you could. But I'm not, well, I just always see the things that are in there. Like if my neighbor wanted to put in 2 boat lifts and they have a small piece of property and then they got that waiver, if they get the waiver for the 10 feet and then they put 2 of them in there, and then I'm a neighbor like really close to them, I'm not sure it's fair to the neighbor that doesn't have all the lifts. And I think that's a big concern in terms, I think, what people are seeing. I think if you look at the comments from Shirley Allshouse, who had written that policy, she was not in favor of the 2 vessel lifts like that, unless there's adequate, length of property.
Those are all good points. I won't speak for the commission, but I will take them to them at the next meeting for their consideration. Just a few comments on the enforcement of the dock and mooring ordinance. Right now, it is strictly reactive, based on complaints. We've had some discussions about possibly taking the boating courses and going out to do some proactive enforcement on the said shiny new police boat that was referenced. So that's something that may happen in the future, but we're just not there yet. As you know, there's a lot of enforcement necessary in town, and we need to pick our battles as we go, but
Well, you know you can rent a boat, you don't need a license.
I'll
So I
submit
got
the
conflicting,
bills.
Jeff and I had a discussion on Friday. We got conflicting information because I had heard that and somebody told us differently. Because we're serious about enforcement coming up this summer, and now we're told that if you rent the boat for the day, you don't need a license. So we gotta,
You can rent a boat for 2 weeks without a license. So there you go.
So can the police rent it to zoning enforcement for 2 weeks?
well, that's got different radios, but there's other things Jeff and I are discussing. But he was at the same meeting I was at where we were told, no, you're and we're still.
DEP.
It's a state issue.
We're gonna get our license because it's a day, and it's like $65 or $85, but to have it, and Jeff and I are gonna do it together, but.
And another point, when enforcing the docks and structures in the water, you almost need to trespass most of the properties in order to do it, because you can't see it from the street. But if I'm able to attack it from the water, that's a whole different, ballgame. So we'll get there.
Well, I mean, I think things are a whole lot better than, I do, I think things are a lot better. I think it's just when we were a kid, nobody had money to go buy swim floats. I mean, if we had money to buy a swim float, my God, we would've been like pounding on my father like all day long. Can we have the swim float? Get us a swim float. We want that toy, right? And so now toys are less expensive and they're just like so available. You know, the little flat floats that they put out, the mats, the ducks really love them.
And they do.
If you don't pull them out every day, then the ducks say, hey, thanks. So I mean, there's lots of things, in the water now, and they're good to play on, and I understand why people get them. It's just that it's this neighbor part, the neighbor part, and then the use of the lake. Remember, we're a long, skinny lake, and the more people come out, the more you force more boats into a smaller, narrower channel, so.
So, just so we have action items, you're gonna bring this back to your commission. Obviously, we do have time, but.
Well, I mean, other people can weigh in, Just because I talk a lot doesn't mean that they can't say, we should move ahead or we should wait. I mean, I think it's important that the rest of the board just, says we should wait or we should move.
Well, not being a boater and only been on the lake a few times, that's a hint to anybody that has a boat. I would like to see more information too, absolutely. So, I'll make a motion to table this until the commission comes in front of us. Does that sound?
We have a second?
Second, but I don't think we need the whole commission. I think you
Well,
just need
yeah,
whoever.
right.
I think what's important is we do it once and right, not do
Yes.
it and then have to keep fixing it. So we do have the time, so I think it's important we get it done right.
And Wetlands agrees, they're in no rush. These were just the few things that they decided might be worth running off the flagpole.
As long as it's not like the last time. It took like 6 years.
Oh, I hope not.
I'll go back, once you vote, I'm gonna go back to my list.
Well, no, I mean, there's things you can't, I mean, these are things that, some people are gonna want them, and some people are gonna say no. But I think it all ties together with the waivers. I think it all gets, tied together with the enforcement of the 10 feet and the distances. I think all that. And then what are you gonna do with the people that already have these things that weren't 1993? That were
Proactive
2006,
Yeah.
2007.
Who else? Thank you, Jeff.
You gotta vote on the table.
Oh, all in favor of tabling? Unanimous?
Jeff, just you and I, maybe the first meeting in December, that'll give you time to talk to the commission to bring it back. Maybe we can invite the chairman, if it's the second meeting in December, but give you a little bit of time. Not saying full-blown vote that night, but to keep the conversation rolling so we can, it could take several meetings, but why don't we plan on possibly that first meeting in December, where more ideas have come out and more open discussion.
Sure.
Take it from there.
Moving on to item B, 24-50, consider and possibly act on the proposed revisions to ordinance number 367, vehicles and traffic.
So I'm gonna start with this one, and Jeff's gonna hang around with me as the zoning enforcement officer. So this became something that we looked into as a town. I got a call in the office one day about a tractor-trailer parking on a residential street overnight. What I thought at the time was a very simple phone call to our zoning enforcement officer to say, hey, we gotta let this person know. Come to find out, we have no ordinance that prohibits any type of tractor-trailer parking on our residential streets. We've come tonight with a suggestion, obviously, to talk about, gauge where the board is actually at in terms of, I don't think we should do anything, Paul, let tractor-trailers park wherever they want, to let's ban it completely. The initial proposal is that, as you see in blue, commercial vehicles in excess of 3/4 ton capacity. I would actually potentially change that to GVW. It's a little bit easier to determine their weights because it's listed on the trucks, but including compact type bus vehicles and pickup trucks or SUVs used for private transportation shall not be parked or stored in any residential district. Let me repeat, I think I should have emphasized the word excluding compact type bus vehicles, pickup trucks, or SUVs used for private transportation. And then B is overnight parking of any commercial vehicle as defined above on any public street of the town of Winchester is prohibited. We have an issue. We have, residents that have called, complained about tractor-trailer parking on residential streets. What's the board's appetite for some type of a tractor-trailer ban? How big do you want it? How small do you want it? But there are sightline issues when they are parked on residential streets if people are trying to pull out. Tractor-trailers are obviously big. But it's an area where we don't have a mechanism to do anything because there is no such ordinance. Tractor-trailers right now are permitted to park in residential areas, park on streets. They can do as they wish, so.
So Paul, I don't have a problem with the parking on the streets. I think we should list gross vehicle weight because
Yeah.
I mean, a F-350 with boxes on it, whatnot. I do have a problem with A. I think that needs to be reworded, because the way it's stated said, shall not be parked or stored in any residential district, period. If they're on the road in a residential district, I agree. If it's a piece of personal property, and I wanna bring my semi home and park it on my 10 acres, it's not the town's business or the state's business. If I wanna bring a tri-axle home, park it on my property for the night. Up where I am, I have several neighbors that are business owners that bring equipment home every night because they're heading out at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. to go the opposite way of their yards. So I don't have a problem, again, I don't want them bringing them up there, parking them on the road overnight, but if they have the room and they can park it on their property, then that's the way it should be.
So Bill, let me ask you a question, and where I'm not gonna weigh in. So you talked about 10 acres. Obviously plenty of room to potentially store a tractor trailer. Let's reverse it. I've spent some time up at the lake, smaller driveways. Some may be able to fit a semi-truck. Would you look at length of driveway to park it, or would you be looking at permitting tractor trailers to park anywhere on a personal residence?
Well, I think that's where we'd have to discuss it, yeah, it would depend on the size of the acreage and length of driveway. Obviously, any of the properties even around here, if you come in at a 45, you could put it right up over your front lawn and almost onto your neighbors. Obviously not. But again, in a rural residential district, where I mean, I'm the shortest driveway in my neighborhood at 350 feet. Most of my neighbors are 1,000 feet, 1,200 feet, 1,400 feet off the road before they built those houses. He could have 5 semis up there, you wouldn't see him. But I get your point. You're right. Just because it's residential property, if it's a half an acre and you want to put in a 45 in your front yard, doesn't fit there. So I think we actually need to look at that and word that carefully.
Yeah.
Because, again, down here, not so much, but up where I am in Winchester Center, there's a ton of business owners, and there's a ton of people up there that have equipment, have semis. There's some long-haul truck drivers that bring rigs home on the weekends. It's the only time they get to see their wife one weekend a month. Again, do I want them on Newfield Road? No, but if they have the property, and if we're gonna change the ordinance, there has to be the room for it.
Yeah, I mean,
But I think we need to look at it.
I think it should say if it fits in your driveway, you can do it, but if you're parking on the grass or in the road, no.
Could it be done by, the zoning zones, like, what's a downtown zone, for neighborhoods?
Town center residential.
Like, could it be done by the zoning blocks that already exist?
Different rules for different zones, if you wanted to. Parking on front lawns is already prohibited, in the zoning regulations, so if they were parking 45 on their lawn, we'd have a leg to stand on.
Okay, all
even
right,
without
all right,
this.
great.
And does this, I think, in looking at this, I get the tractor trailer thing, cause it stands out, a big tractor trailer. I don't know if the trailer, the tractor part of it, right? Are we banning the tractor part of it? And then if we are, then what about like big, huge RV campers or buses? Cause there was an issue, I think, a while ago about a bus, if I remember correctly. And then when you have the Case Avenue just going one way, or no vehicle that way, I think there's a couple other roads in town that you might wanna say no big gross.
The Case Ave and Gay Street section is in the ordinance already. That's the only part of
Yeah,
the town.
but I
that
think
allows
there's a
trucks.
couple other parts.
yeah, to
out
add
there.
Oh, you'd be looking to add additional, okay.
Yeah, because there's some people that talk about that, or when trucks take shortcuts. So there's been some of that that's been out there.
So this is meeting 1 of 3, right?
Yeah, so we could also get more information and not.
It doesn't have to be
rush
the
us through.
first meeting.
Doesn't have
I'd like to go on what the mayor, the good mayor said. If we're gonna do this, let's do it once and do it right. So maybe same thing, make a motion to table this.
Selectman Marino, I talked to earlier today, and he does have some expertise on the vehicle issues of this. So I think it is a good idea to wait for him to be back to give his input on the vehicle sizes.
But also just what we said now, or whatever everybody
Yeah.
thinks now, has to be looked at too.
Yeah.
Buses, large RVs, because sometimes there's large RVs out on streets in the summertime, and can they be there? Because I've seen some that are the size of a big school bus, right? So should those be parked in our small streets or in yards, or? I know what Bill's saying, that they have room, right? It's like your waterfront. You have lots of room versus tiny little rooms.
Yeah, it may need to go by district. Like you said, you have an ordinance, you can't park on the front lawn. I can put 15 cars on my front lawn and you'd never see them from the
And-
road.
And then back I wanna say maybe February or March, there was a tractor trailer that was parked down
Main
up by the ambulance that was on Main
long
Street.
time.
So can we stop the overnight parking of tractor trailers with their trailers on Main Street?
Well, and I
Or does the
think-
state do that?
That's a great question, but I think this board, but weigh in if I'm getting a wrong temperature. I think one thing that the board definitely agrees on, which really doesn't need much more
In the street.
debate, was overnight parking is just prohibited.
Right.
I think everybody's and if I'm wrong, please, but I think one thing we got right was B, because I think everybody's agreeing that overnight parking, of any commercial vehicle as defined above. Although, now you look at commercial vehicle, those potential RVs are not necessarily commercial vehicles.
A lot of those are private. Most
Yeah, a
of
lot
those
of them
most
are
of those are
just-
private.
Yeah.
But there are also commercial vehicles that aren't tractor trailers.
And that as well. Although then that would fall under, excluding compact-type bus vehicles, pickup trucks, SUVs used for private transportation. They would
But
be
what we're
excluded.
trying to do is get rid of the size, right?
Yes.
So you also gotta realize too, like, in what I do for a living or what I did prior, you know, drive a dump truck for a company, gravel company. Sometimes you work late and they tell you to bring the truck home, you know, because it's easier for you to just
Get up in the morning, pick
go
up
to
the
the,
load.
yeah, you're, you know, whatever. So, I mean, you gotta think about people's business. Like I said, if you could park it in your driveway, I don't have a problem with that. If you can't park it in your driveway, and you have to park on the lawn and it disrupts your neighbor, or you have to park in the street, then I have an issue with it.
Where are you gonna park these vehicles? If, as Troy said, they come home work, you've gotta have a place for them to park them.
So there's a lot of lots. Unfortunately, they have to get transportation to and from them. Like in Torrington, Lowe's allows the semis with trailers to park overnight. Walmart will allow them to park
Then it
overnight.
needs to be in the ordinance.
Yeah, I believe Stop and Shop, or I know Tractor Supply will allow them to park down there overnight, no questions asked, just pull in, park overnight. Same with RVs, they'll allow RVs to go in overnight, but I think what we're trying to avoid here is, a tractor and a trailer on High Street, kind of tucked off to the side of the road,
On the
Main Street in front of the
sidewalk,
Gilson.
On the sidewalk.
I mean, you're talking, you're also, I mean, if you go by GVW, you're eliminating like a 10-wheeler, like a plow truck. You know, I mean, that's an issue because I could take home a plow truck easily. And it fits in my driveway, so I can park it in my driveway. You know, I mean, that's something you gotta consider.
Well, yeah, I think this is great, and it's given us direction. Again, you know, our complaint into the office was, you know, all this road was on Hamel.
Yes.
And the individuals that live over there literally couldn't see to pull out, which created us to open this up to discuss, because we didn't have a mechanism to enforce or do anything, and then it led us down a lot of different roads of, okay, do the neighbors wanna see a tractor trailer parked in, you know, a particular driveway, you know, all hours of the day. So I think you and I can tee this up relatively sooner rather than later and bring it back to the board with new suggestions and incorporate everything. Maybe talk with Selectman Marino, who seems to be maybe a guru, or anybody else that seems to be a guru around this, and come back with something. But what I'm sensing is there is a desire to retune this ordinance. I did something a little bit different on these approaches tonight, and I learned a very valuable lesson. If you go back to the fire tax abatement, I didn't schedule it as a meeting one. I talked as a discussion with all of you. My team up said, oh, no, we've always just gone. We're gonna go back to my original thought of we're gonna have a discussion first. It won't be the first meeting, so there won't be any tabling. And we can just have an open discussion. And then if this board has, you know, flavor and wants to see something, then at the next meeting or slightly thereafter, we'll go to that quote-unquote first initial meeting. So, learned a lesson. My team said, this is the old way. This is how we always did it, Paul. I kind of like, I need to get your reactions to things, and I need to understand in order. So we're gonna go back to the old way of the first meeting when a potential ordinance change or new ordinance, you all are gonna discuss it first, and then we'll go to that official first meeting, because I'm left a little bit like,
We'll try it your way, now we're gonna do it my way.
yeah, you know, going back to.
Can I ask a question? Did this ordinance, was it just an update our ordinance, or did we look at other ordinances from other towns?
We looked at other ordinances from other towns. In fact, the town I was in before, we passed a tractor trailer ban. I know he won't be too happy, or Bill, but we passed that no tractor trailers or semis, even without the part in the back, could park in bobtail and actual truck itself. Trailer, and what's the thing?
Bobtail is the truck.
That's the truck?
Yeah. That's
Sounds like
without
that would be the
trailer.
back, but I learned something tonight.
Tractor's the
Prohibited
front,
from
the
all
other is-
residential areas. Keeping in mind, though, in that town, we do have a lot of area where these people could park. Yeah, so we've looked at other towns, try to give you something that was a little bit, we understand, especially what Mr. Pozo, Mr. Lemire was saying about, you know, people working, so we'll come back.
Let me ask you,
How are you gonna enforce this? I guess that's the other thing that I was concerned about. How's it going to be? Is it the police department? He has enough he has enough.
Yeah, it's the police
issues.
department.
The
So,
police.
once this
Okay.
becomes, because they are the traffic authority in town, it would then become a police
Okay.
department enforcement, which then creates finding mechanisms per state statute, what they could potentially fine that individual, or warn if it's, you know,
Okay.
the first time. Quick conversation even before we came down here tonight, you even have to take into effect a U-Haul. Somebody may be moving, they may park it temporarily at night, because they've loaded it, they're gonna move to, but all things that, I was hoping you guys would table it, because more things entered our head as I was walking down the stairs, but we have more work to do, because you have to think of every situation.
Right.
And a U-Haul is a situation where you don't wanna inconvenience, but, you know, it is temporary, so we have some work to do. But I definitely have a sense of where this board wants to go, and we'll get there.
let me ask you a question. Did you have any complaints about, any commercial vehicles in people's property, or it was just on the road?
Their complaint came in just on the road. The residents was just on the road. But as you probably are all aware, once something gets into my head, then I start looking at it in a bigger global picture of
I
things.
think maybe you should stick to the road and leave the property alone for a while.
No. Blight. There's an
Blight.
ordinance, you can't park on,
Yeah,
in
but
the
if you're
lawn.
you're gonna just hurt a worker, right?
You're gonna
If
what?
the worker has to come home with his
You
vehicle.
park down at,
Who's
Tractor
gonna
Supply.
do that?
Well, again,
Gotta have a ride.
I agree with maybe what Candy said. We gotta look at it by districting, right? For the property I have where I am and the taxes we pay,
I'm not talking tractor
I'm,
trailer.
I'm parking whatever I want on my property.
Dump truck.
This is where government needs to, and again, what's good for down here may not be good for up there, right? I know it's fair, we're gonna go back to it's gotta be fair for everybody.
But you gotta look at you know,
It's space.
one of the
Paying for
enjoyments I've had is
space.
people are taking me around this gorgeous town. And Highland Lake is gorgeous, small driveways, where up where you live, Bill, is gorgeous as well, cause it's, you know, very secluded and very, you know, there's a lot of more space up there. So we do have, and I love the idea of looking at it per district, because I think that may get us to a point where we can develop some type of an ordinance that works. I didn't wanna say the word fair, I think it needs to work, you
Right,
know?
right.
So,
Which is, I think, like you said, where the districting.
I mean, it could also be by, you know, lot size, you know. I
Or
mean,
lot size, or.
Anything under 10,000 square feet, or, I mean, I don't know what numbers you would use, but,
Yeah.
you know, maybe it's by that, not by zone, you know, because people can still own tiny places up by.
Well, right,
not everything's
absolutely
big.
right, you're right, yeah.
So we don't even need to table this, we can just take no action, right?
Right.
yeah, which is,
Okay.
but. we'll
But
get
you have the direction we want.
Oh, I got the direction. Gonna take any, no, you guys are very warm to the idea, and we're just gonna come back with some new ideas and see what y'all think.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Jeff.
Jeff, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
See you tomorrow.
Moving on to item C, 24-51, proposed line item transfers by the Director of Finance.
Oh, but that's by me. So we did have one of our police vehicles blow an engine, and a few other parts. We don't have any additional money in the maintenance of vehicle line. So the transfer before you tonight is from labor skilled and professional line of the police department, moving it into the maintenance of vehicle line of $10,000. I think if you go to your second page, maybe third page, you will see the invoice from the automotive place right here in town of just under $9,200 to get that vehicle back on the road again. And we are in desperate need.
I move that the Board of Selectmen approve the line item transfer of $10,000 from 1-210-192-000, labor skilled and professional, to 1-210-821-0000, maintenance of vehicle in the amount of $10,000.
I'll second.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Bill. Any discussion?
Yeah.
Candy?
Is there a warranty when you put a new engine in?
Yes.
I am not gonna comment on that, because I don't know the answer to that, actually, so.
I don't know about a police vehicle, but I'm pretty sure.
There should be, but can we verify that, Paul?
We definitely can.
I mean, before you do the purchase order, I mean, not, this motion's okay, but that's for the purchase order.
Yep.
Did anybody look into any of the used vehicles we have out back that we could do something there?
So this is one of the Chevy Tahoes, so we don't have any of the quote-unquote engines that would fit that particular vehicle.
All right.
Well, I look at everything.
Did we look into putting one of them back into service over the Tahoe, because the Tahoe costs more?
Well, the issue with that is those vehicles are a little bit older in age. This is only a 2019, which still has a lot of life left into it, in terms of transmission and everything, yeah.
And we blew an engine?
Yeah.
How many miles on
I
it?
don't know how that happened.
Guys hit me. I don't know the odometer on it, but I will find that out, and
I guess point being, Paul, like, if it's only 2019, is it still under warranty, or did we
not
break
under
the-
warranty.
It
That was
is
the
not
first
under
question I
warranty,
asked.
okay, so I don't need the mileage.
Yeah, that was the first question I asked. Was it under warranty?
Is it Dodge, Ford, or Chevy?
This is Chevy Tahoe.
Keep in mind that police vehicles are gonna run 24 hours a day though, so.
Yeah.
Where you might put 12,000 miles on it,
Do you
they
know
probably do
what-
30.
What blue?
Yes, so,
Did anybody talk to Chevy?
I don't believe anybody talked to Chevy because it was out of warranty. So
Well, maybe they would do a,
They won't.
they wanna do,
Thinking no, but
Well-
they wanna do a good, like, good neighbor?
Maybe to Candy's point, maybe not talk to Chevy, but who's the dealer we got it from? Have we bought other vehicles? Do we ever intend to do business with them again? Maybe you go to them and say,
2019.
look,
This may have come from like New Jersey, because that was the only place we could get them at the time.
Is this one of the ones that we,
I think it had
is
to-
this one of the ones that we bought used new?
I think these are one of the two that we bought together that were like in New Jersey or Maryland was the closest we could get.
I mean, definitely you would be able to bring that to a dealer and get that kind of price for put a new motor in. I'll tell you
I get
right
that. My
now.
point is, if we bought it from Northwest Hills or Sullivan's or
Right,
something,
right.
you can go to them and say, look, can you help us out? Maybe don't do the 50% markup on the motor. Can you mark it up 20% and save us a little something? But if it came from Jersey or something, at least maybe look into the history of it, Paul, see if we
I'm
can.
curious what caused the motor to fail, that's.
I don't know, it was just brought to me that the engine died.
Find that out.
Well, you know, like
course you can.
my 2020 Chevy Colorado I had, it blew the number 2 cylinder with like 37,000 miles on it.
It happened.
So it could just be the Chevy engines now, you know, because the 2020, 2019, you know, and the lifters and rockers went.
Well, that's what I'm curious
And it's
to
like,
find out.
when did that happen, you know?
Bet these 23 Hyundai, 21,000 miles on it, blew the motor.
All right, so we have the motion and the second.
Who seconded?
Wasn't it Bill and Bill?
That's it, Bill.
All in favor? Unanimous? Moving on to item D, 24-09. Resolution supporting the acceptance of the Patrick Leahy Bulletproof Vest Partnership Program funding.
This is a grant that our grant individual went after, Tom. We did fund bulletproof vests in the current year budget. This is just gonna help subsidize some of the cost of those bulletproof vests. So although there is a match of $3,543.28, we are gonna use a line item in the budget for the vest that we all funded as a town. We just fortunately were able to get this grant, so instead of funding it for, you know, well over $7,000, we're gonna be able to offset some of those costs by just over $3,400. So, just need the board's approval to accept this grant, knowing that there is a match, but the match is a budgeted line item, and we'll have no problem making the match and not having to turn back the grant.
I make a motion to, what is it, you got anything written?
Yep. Somewhere.
Make a motion to support the acceptance of a grant for Bulletproof Vest Partnership Program funding in the amount of $34,5672.
Thank you,
Second.
Frank. Thank you, Bill. Any other discussion? All in favor? Unanimous? Thank you. Citizens' comments, we have no citizens in the chambers. Moving on to item 12, Selectmen's comments and reports. Does anyone have anything?
So real quick, Paul, I'd like to give just a shout out to Tom. Before I go ahead and find this grant, I got the opportunity this week to work with him a little bit. I believe, Tim, you sent a potential grant over to Tanya.
Yes.
About parking racks. I happened to be in the department, in with Tanya, when your email popped up. She said, oh, look at this that Candy got. So she printed it, I ran it right over to Tom, who looked into it that evening, I believe on his own time, and emailed us right back next day and said, yeah, we're fully eligible. It's for up to like $8,000. And again, I'd just like to give him a shout out that I've worked with him once or twice in the past, and he definitely goes above and beyond to do what he can for this town, so you pass that along to him, it'd be nice.
Well, thank you. He's a great person and comes
Excellent.
to work every day, and he looks for different ways to try and save the town and our taxpayers as much money as they can, and looks for those unique grant opportunities.
Yeah.
So he does a really good job. So thank you, and I'll make sure he hears that.
Thank you.
Other comments?
I'd just like to say that I think we should really be vigilant on the Main Street parking issues because the Christmas season's coming and people are gonna wanna shop in our downtowns, and that really creates a problem. And then my second thing is, I'd like to see the town manager bring forth some properties to look at, to make some decisions on. Cause we had executive session on that and haven't heard anything since, so.
Just so I'm clear, so the potential of selling the properties?
Correct.
Is that next meeting, executive session?
Should bring Dave in or whatever, have a meeting with him if we need to or whatever, see what he came up with, cause he was supposed to get back to us.
So I believe we had one executive session on this already, right? We've all seen a list. It's funny he brings it up because I think I've expressed same to you. I just wanna start moving forward, because we keep talking about it. We're a month and a half away from where we started and nothing's gone on the market. Let's pick some properties, figure out if we have to go to the public with them, we do. If we don't, if there's anything that we can just throw right out, let's get some stuff moving. We need to build this grand list.
10-4.
No matter what we would have to put it out. I mean, we can't pick, who. We have to do a very open and public process. It would have to go to town meeting. So this board would need to decide which properties it wanted to go for. We could begin an executive session. When we come out of executive session, this board will need to vote to push it out there, and then the process would begin, and then ultimately town meeting. But if we want it on the meeting in 2 weeks,
I would like to see it on an executive session on the
Let's
next
do it
meeting in 2
before the
weeks.
budget season starts.
And let's not come out of that executive session until we come up with at least five or six properties on that list that we can
Yep.
move on.
So we had a list, is that the list you're talking about working off of? But along with that, I think staff needs to prepare, because on that list there are properties. But I think there needs to be a preparation not only of the sales price, but what the income from the taxes will be on it, and whether or not that property would be merged into a neighbor property and what the taxes would be on it then. Because some of those properties could go either way with things. So what would if staff prepares a report that says, if it's sold on its own as, let's say, a building lot, this is the anticipation of the sale price, and this is the anticipation of the taxes. If it's sold as not a attachment or merged with the neighborhood,
Lot line adjustment.
lot line merging, this is, it may sell for the same price, but this is what the taxes will be. So whatever property it is, there should be that analysis done with it, so that when we make, not just because we make decision, we won't be making the decision, we'll be saying, we believe this should be sold, and then it will go through the whole process, which includes going to planning and zoning, which includes setting a public, a town meeting date. And then after that, if it should be sold, then it would go to the realtor, or it would go to bid process. But most things since 2000, I'd say 2006-ish have gone through realtors. Because it seems to get us more money than it being on an ad in a little corner of a paper somewhere.
I can have it prepared, not a problem. We'll do it at the next meeting.
All right, just a couple things for me. Congratulations to the Recreation Department on another successful trunk or treat, as Town Manager Harrington mentioned earlier. Tomorrow, Election Day. Not necessarily important who you vote for, it's to be involved in the process. And then lastly, with over 90 fires in the state of Connecticut currently, just a reminder that we have still in effect an open fire burn ban in town, so just be mindful. The fires are getting closer and they're getting bigger. Until we get several days of rain, it's not gonna change much.
And that's not in the near future.
That is correct.
I have one right down the road for me that Peter just informed me is still burning.
Yeah, the one on Sunnybrook.
Sunnybrook is, they're
jumped
leaving
the road, I
a
heard.
bunch of people there tonight just to monitor it. They're gonna jump back on it in the morning.
All right, can we have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Good night.
Good night, everybody. I know I got a busy day tomorrow. No, sometimes she wants the alarm set, stuff like that, because she's putting the kids to bed, turn the lights off, stuff like that.